Hello, sports fans. Welcome to Super Sports Central. Today, we're going to be going over my Week 11 college football rankings. So, going over last week's rankings and what those teams did in Week 10. Last week at number 10, I had BYU. They were on a bye. Ninth was Texas A&M. They were upset by South Carolina, losing 44-20. 8, I had Tennessee. They beat Kentucky 28-18. 7 was Notre Dame. They were on a bye. 6, I had Penn State. They lost to Ohio State 20-13. 5, I had Texas. They were on a bye. 4th was Miami. They beat Duke 53-31. 3 was Ohio State. They beat Penn State 20-13. 2 was Georgia. They defeated Florida 34-20. And 1 was Oregon, who easily beat Michigan 38-17. But getting into this week's rankings and beginning things at number 10, I've got Indiana. So Indiana enters my top 10 for the first time this season after they beat Michigan State very easily by a score of 47-10. Indiana, they played a great game offensively. Quarterback Curtis Rourke returned from injury, and he threw for 263 yards and 4 touchdowns. The run game was solid for Indiana with 129 yards and another 2 scores. And then the defense was dominant, forcing 2 turnovers, allowing under 200 yards and under 10 points. And Indiana, for the first time in program history, they're now 9-0. Now, the only reason I don't have them higher is they've played absolutely nobody, but Indiana, they're a very good team, and I have them at number 10. Ninth, I've got Penn State. So Penn State drops to number 9 after they lost to Ohio State 20-13. And Penn State, they didn't play a very good game. They got off to a great start, leading 10-0 in the first 10 minutes, but then they were outscored 20-3 throughout the rest of the game. The Penn State offense was bad at scoring just 13 points, but it was actually the defense that scored a touchdown, so Penn State scored just 6 points offensively. But Drew Auer was not very good. He had just 146 yards and an interception. Penn State couldn't really run the football, and for most of the game could not get anything going on the offensive side of the ball. They did get a 4th and goal from the Ohio State 1-yard line late in the game, but couldn't get in the end zone, and that ended up being their final possession. Then defensively for Penn State, they weren't great, but weren't terrible. They had trouble stopping the run, but they forced a couple of turnovers and only allowed 20 points. The defense put the team in a position to win, but the offense was terrible, and a big reason they lost this game. Penn State has now lost 8 straight games to Ohio State, and after their first loss of the season, they're at number 9. 8th, I've got BYU. So BYU moves up to number 8, which is really just a result of a couple of losses, but BYU is on a bye. They're currently sitting at 8-0. Next week, they face Utah. 7, I have Tennessee. So Tennessee moves up to number 7 following their 28-18 win over Kentucky. But again, this wasn't the greatest game for Tennessee, as their offense was okay, but they scored 21 of their 28 points in the second half, and that's been a common theme over the last 4 games for Tennessee. They've really struggled to score in the first half. But quarterback Nico Iamaleava was pretty good with 292 yards, and running back Dylan Sampson continued to be a huge part of the Tennessee offense as he had 142 yards and 2 touchdowns. And then defensively for Tennessee, they were pretty good. They held Kentucky to just 18 points and forced 3 turnovers. And Tennessee, they're now 7-1, and while they're not looking the greatest, having played a lot of close games against teams who aren't great, they're finding ways to win, and I've got them at number 7. 6th, I have Notre Dame. So Notre Dame moves up to number 6. They were on a bye. Next week, they host Florida State. 5, I have Texas. So Texas remains at number 5. They were also on a bye, and next week, they host Florida. 4th is Miami. So Miami remains at number 4 after their 53-31 win over Duke. Miami actually looked to be in trouble, as they were losing 28-17 in the third quarter, but after that, they were a completely different team, outscoring Duke 36-6 for the rest of the game. But the Miami offense was great once again. They had 53 points and 526 total yards. Cam Ward threw for 400 yards, 5 touchdowns, and an interception. And receiver Xavier Restrepo was great, with 8 catches for 146 yards and 3 scores. Then defensively for Miami, they weren't great, allowing over 30 points and 400 total yards, although they did force 4 turnovers. But this is a good Miami team. Their offense is insane, and their defense is definitely concerning, but as long as they can keep scoring, they're going to keep winning, and I've got Miami at number 4. 3, I have Ohio State. So Ohio State remains at number 3 after their 20-13 win over Penn State. They got off to a rough start, trailing 10-0 early in the game, but then they dominated the rest of the game. Ohio State was pretty good offensively. Quarterback Will Howard was solid with 182 yards and 2 touchdowns, although he did have 2 turnovers. And Ohio State, they really leaned on the run game, especially late in the game. And even with a reshuffled offensive line, they still ran the football very effectively, as Ohio State ran for 179 yards while averaging 4.7 yards per carry. Then defensively for Ohio State, they were also great, not allowing a single offensive touchdown and had a big goal line stand to seal the win. But Ohio State, after another win over Penn State, they're at number 3. Second, I have Georgia. So Georgia remains at number 2 after a 34-20 win over Florida, but the game is actually a lot closer than the final score may suggest. Because Georgia, they scored 2 touchdowns in the final 4 minutes, one of which gave them the lead and the other extended it. But Georgia, they didn't play the greatest game. Their offense was okay, but Carson Beck continued to turn the ball over as he threw for 309 yards and 2 touchdowns, but he threw 3 interceptions. And those turnovers are definitely getting concerning for Georgia, considering Florida scored most of their points off turnovers. Then defensively for Georgia, they played pretty well, allowing under 4 yards per play and just 259 total yards. But Georgia enters at number 2 after a big win over Florida. Even though it wasn't pretty, I have them at number 2. Now, I can understand the argument to have Ohio State at 2 and Georgia at 3, especially because Ohio State is coming off a good win over Penn State on the road. But when you look at Georgia and Ohio State, they're actually pretty similar. Both teams lost on the road to good teams, as Georgia lost to Alabama, Ohio State lost to Oregon, and then both teams recently went on the road to beat another good team, as Ohio State beat Penn State and Georgia beat Texas. But I'm just going to keep it how I had it. I think Georgia might be the slightly better team as well, but I've got Georgia at 2, Ohio State at 3. And coming in at number 1, I have Oregon. So Oregon remains at number 1 after they easily beat Michigan by a score of 38-17. Oregon really dominated this game. Quarterback Dylan Gabriel continued his Heisman campaign with 294 yards and 2 total touchdowns, 1 passing, 1 rushing. Oregon ran the football very effectively, rushing for 176 yards and 4 touchdowns, and then the Oregon defense also dominated against the bad Michigan offense, allowing just 270 yards and 17 points. But Oregon, they've remained undefeated, and they've remained at number 1. And my updated college football playoff predictions. So my 1 seed remains Miami, a 13-0 ACC champion. My 2 seed is Georgia, 12-1, winning the SEC. 3 seed is Ohio State at 12-1, winning the Big Ten. And my 4 seed is BYU at 12-1, winning the Big 12. 5th seed is Oregon at 12-1. 6th seed is Notre Dame at 11-1. My 7th seed is Texas at 11-2. My 8th seed is Boise State at 12-1. They're the Group of 5 conference champion, winning the Mountain West. My 9th seed is Penn State at 11-1. My 10th seed is Indiana, also at 11-1. My 11th seed is Tennessee at 10-2. And my 12th seed is SMU at 11-2. But those are my Week 11 college football rankings and my updated college football playoff predictions. Thank you guys for watching. Be sure to like this video, subscribe, turn notifications so you don't miss any other upcoming videos. I do my best to post as often as possible, and I will see you in the next video.